What if everything you thought you knew about Earth was wrong? We live on a spinning ball of rock hurtling through the endless black void of space, and yet, most of us have barely scratched the surface of understanding what this planet really is. Sure, we learn the basics in school. Earth is the third rock from the Sun, it's round, has water, life, and a magnetic field. But the deeper you dig, the more disturbing, mind-blowing, and downright mysterious things get. Because buried beneath all that topsoil and ocean water are secrets. Secrets that science is only just beginning to uncover. Hidden oceans trapped deep underground. Strange gravitational anomalies where the laws of physics seem to bend. Ancient maps that show places long before they were discovered. Time itself running slower depending on where you stand. And maybe, just maybe, ancient civilizations knew things we're still trying to figure out today. This isn't just about random science facts, it's about realizing that our planet, the only home we've ever known, is far more complex, unpredictable, and alive than we've been led to believe. And when you hear some of what's been discovered in just the past few years, you'll start to question how much we really know, or how much we're being told. From underground water that could drown the entire surface, to mini-moons orbiting us in secret, to unexplained sounds coming from the Earth's core, this isn't science fiction. These are real findings, backed by real data, with consequences we're only beginning to understand. So buckle up, because what you're about to learn might just change the way you see Earth forever. And no, this isn't one of those feel-good "the Earth is amazing" videos. This is the stuff they don't teach you in school. Let's get into it. Let's start with something that sounds like pure science fiction, but is very, very real. Earth might be hiding an entire ocean, inside itself. Not under the surface like the one we swim in, but hundreds of miles deep within the planet's mantle. This isn't a theory anymore. In 2014, scientists discovered actual proof that there's a massive reservoir of water, 3 times the volume of all the oceans on the surface, locked inside a blue crystal called ringwoodite. This discovery completely rewrites our understanding of the planet's structure. We used to think of the Earth's interior as just hot, dry rock, lava and iron. But now we know there's a vast, deep water system trapped beneath the crust, hiding under intense pressure. It's not liquid water as we know it. It's embedded inside the crystal structure of minerals. But this underground ocean might be the reason we even have water on the surface in the first place. Think about it. This hidden water could cycle up and down through volcanic activity, tectonic shifts, and even deep earthquakes, essentially acting like a planetary plumbing system. That means the water in your bottle might have been deep inside the planet millions of years ago, before it ever hit the sky as rain. Now here's where it gets even weirder. This underground ocean might not just be a relic of the past. Some researchers believe it's still active, feeding water to the surface and possibly affecting sea levels, not because of ice melting, but because the Earth itself might be leaking from the inside out. And if you thought that was strange, this next part might melt your brain, because there's another ocean on Earth, and it's not made of water at all. Scientists discovered a huge blob of molten iron and nickel, sitting near the Earth's core, surrounded by a boundary that literally sloshes and moves over time. They call it the outer core ocean, and it flows like a river, just one made of metal, not water. This movement generates Earth's magnetic field, which protects all life from deadly solar radiation. So essentially, our planet is kept alive by a swirling metallic ocean that nobody can see and nobody can reach. But even the magnetic field itself is doing things we don't fully understand. It's weakening, and fast. Over the last 200 years, Earth's magnetic field has dropped in strength by nearly 10%. In one particular region, called the South Atlantic Anomaly, it's dropped even more dramatically. Satellites flying over this area often malfunction or lose communication entirely. And what's more chilling is that this could be a sign of a magnetic pole reversal, a process where the North and South poles literally swap places. It's happened before, multiple times in Earth's history, and every time it caused massive disruptions in climate, animal migration, and even possibly extinction events. We don't know when it'll happen again, but the magnetic field's behaviour is starting to raise eyebrows in the scientific community. And that brings us to something even more bizarre. Time doesn't flow the same way in every part of the Earth. Yes, time. Einstein's theory of general relativity tells us that gravity can bend time, and it's not just theory anymore. We have proof. If you stand at sea level with a super accurate atomic clock and then carry that same clock to the top of a mountain, the two clocks will tick at different speeds. This means people living in higher altitudes age slightly faster than those at sea level. The difference is tiny, microseconds over a lifetime. But the fact that it exists at all is shocking. Earth's gravity actually stretches and compresses time. We are literally walking through a planet that distorts time depending on where you are. Now let's go even further. Did you know the Earth isn't a perfect sphere? It's actually squished at the poles and bulging at the equator. Scientists call it an oblate spheroid, but that's just the start. The planet is also lumpy. Seriously. The gravitational pull on Earth is stronger in some areas and weaker in others. This causes water to pile up in certain places and shift in ways we don't fully understand. The reason? Massive structures inside the Earth, including ancient slabs of tectonic plates that sank millions of years ago, still distort gravity today. These gravity holes change how satellites orbit the planet and even affect GPS systems. So while your phone might show your exact location, the Earth underneath it is constantly wobbling and shifting, both above and below. And don't think Earth is sitting still in space either. Right now, the entire planet is spinning at over 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. At the same time, it's orbiting the Sun at 67,000 miles per hour. But it doesn't stop there. Our entire solar system is whipping around the centre of the Milky Way galaxy at over 500,000 miles per hour. And the galaxy itself, it's flying through space at 1.3 million miles per hour, yet we feel nothing. No wind, no drag, no motion sickness. That's because Earth's motion is constant and we're part of it. But once in a while, that motion changes, ever so slightly, and that's when things start to feel off. Some people believe that these small wobbles in Earth's rotation, called Chandler wobbles, could be linked to natural disasters, weather changes, or even strange human behaviour. It's not proven, but the idea that the Earth itself can subtly shift and throw off the balance of life is compelling. One thing is for sure, these wobbles are real, and they happen like clockwork every 433 days. Scientists still aren't exactly sure what causes them, but when you're living on a spinning, tilted, fluid-filled rock, nothing stays perfectly still for long. And here's another mindbender. Earth has more than one moon. Sort of. While the big bright moon we see at night is the only real satellite, scientists have discovered quasi-moons, small asteroids that orbit Earth in strange patterns. One of them, called 469219 Kamoa-Lewa, has been following Earth's orbit for nearly a century. It's not stable, and it won't last forever, but for now, Earth isn't alone. These mini-moons don't look impressive, but they might hold clues about the early solar system, and possibly act as staging grounds for future space missions. NASA is already planning to visit one of them, so to sum it up, just this one section, we've got hidden oceans, metal rivers, weakening magnetic fields, gravity-warped time, shifting poles, extra moons, and a planet that never stops moving, and we've only just scratched the surface. But what if those mysteries weren't just scientific quirks? What if some of them were known to ancient civilizations, and deliberately hidden? What comes next might force you to rethink everything you thought you knew about human history. Let's dive into something that might sound like conspiracy, but the evidence is very real and deeply unsettling. Ancient civilizations may have known secrets about the Earth that modern science is only beginning to uncover. This isn't just a fringe theory anymore. From ancient maps that seem to show Antarctica without ice, to stone structures built with impossible precision, there's growing reason to believe that early humans had knowledge that didn't come from guesswork or trial and error. One of the most chilling examples is the Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral using even older source material. What's disturbing is that this map shows the coastline of Antarctica, without ice. The only way to map that land accurately is if it were visible, and that hasn't been possible for more than 6,000 years. So how did a centuries-old map maker know what modern satellite imaging only confirmed recently? Even more mind-blowing, the map uses longitudinal accuracy that wasn't available until the 18th century, so whoever helped draw it knew things we didn't. And that's not the only strange artifact. At sites like Pumapunku in Bolivia, Enormous stones weighing several tons are cut with laser-like precision. These aren't just big rocks, they're perfectly carved blocks with interlocking features that would be difficult to recreate even with today's technology. Some stones appear to have been sliced like butter, yet they're made from granite and diorite, some of the hardest materials on Earth. This raises a massive question. How did people without power tools, lasers, or even wheels pull this off? The mainstream explanation is primitive chiseling and elbow grease, but when you look at these cuts, they aren't crude, they're surgically clean, they're mathematically perfect. They defy logic. Then there's the astronomical alignment. So many ancient structures, from the pyramids of Giza to Stonehenge, are aligned with the stars in ways that suggest a deep understanding of celestial mechanics. The 3 pyramids in Egypt align exactly with Orion's belt, and this wasn't a random choice. Orion was sacred to the Egyptians, but the precision of the layout, down to the millimeter, suggests more than religious symbolism. It suggests star maps, geometry, and advanced planning. In fact, the Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60th of a degree. That level of alignment is almost impossible without GPS, yet they did it, 4,500 years ago. And here's where it gets eerie. Recent discoveries in Göbekli Tepe, a site in Turkey dating back over 11,000 years, have completely flipped the timeline of human history. This site features massive stone pillars arranged in complex circles with detailed carvings of animals, celestial bodies, and abstract symbols. It predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and suggests that civilization, or at least organised culture, began much earlier than previously believed. The question is, who built it? And more importantly, where did they get the knowledge to do so? Because Göbekli Tepe wasn't just built, it was buried, intentionally. Someone went out of their way to preserve it under tons of earth, hiding it from the world. But why? What were they trying to protect or hide? And what happened to the people who built it? There's no sign of a city or permanent settlement nearby. It's as if they came, built it, and vanished, leaving behind a monument with astronomical and possibly metaphysical significance. Some researchers even believe the carvings at Göbekli Tepe describe a cataclysmic event, possibly a comet strike, that could have triggered the Younger Dryas, a sudden deep freeze around 10,800 BCE that wiped out massive portions of Earth's population and altered global climate. That comet theory gained traction when scientists discovered nanodiamonds, platinum, and shocked quartz, indicators of a massive impact, spread across layers of Earth's crust that date to the exact same time. If true, it would mean humanity suffered a near-extinction level event, and survivors may have tried to warn future generations by encoding their knowledge in stone. Some even believe ancient myths about floods, gods from the sky, or lost golden ages could be echoes of those survivors trying to pass down what they knew. And that brings us to Atlantis. Not the cheesy underwater city, but the real idea behind the myth. Plato described Atlantis as a powerful civilization that fell into the sea in a single day and night. He claimed it existed 9,000 years before his time, which would place it right around the end of the last ice age. While most historians dismiss Atlantis as fiction, recent underwater discoveries have reignited the debate. Off the coasts of India, Japan, and Cuba, divers have found massive submerged structures that look eerily like temples, roads, and pyramids, buried under hundreds of feet of water. These sites would have been above sea level during the Ice Age. So who built them, and what wiped them out? Then there are the flood myths. Nearly every ancient culture, from the Sumerians to the Native Americans, has a legend of a great flood that destroyed the world. These stories all share similar elements: divine punishment, advanced societies being wiped away, and survivors being chosen to carry knowledge forward. Sound familiar? It mirrors the Noah story, but it also lines up with geological evidence of rapid sea level rise about 11,000 years ago, exactly when glaciers began melting. So either every culture coincidentally made up the same story, or they were all remembering something real. Now here's the kicker. Ancient texts from India, like the Mahabharata, describe wars involving flying machines called vimanas, weapons that sound eerily like modern nuclear explosions, and cities being turned to ash in seconds. In one passage, the text describes a weapon that made the sun shine 10,000 times brighter. and left survivors with hair and nails falling out, symptoms disturbingly similar to radiation poisoning. These texts are thousands of years old. Were they exaggerating myths? Or do they hint at something more? It's no wonder that modern thinkers like Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, and even some geologists are pushing to reconsider the timeline of human history. They argue that an advanced civilization may have existed before the Younger Dryas cataclysm, one that was nearly wiped out but left fragments of its knowledge behind. Mainstream academics hate this idea, calling it pseudoscience. But with each new discovery, underwater ruins, ancient maps, precise alignments, and impossible stonework, the case keeps getting stronger. And let's not forget about the skulls. In Peru and other regions, archaeologists have found elongated skulls that don't match normal human anatomy. While many can be explained by head-binding practices, a few contain cranial volumes too large to be faked, and DNA that's still being studied. Are they human? Mostly, but not entirely. It's one more piece in a puzzle that keeps growing larger and stranger with every dig. So maybe, just maybe, the Earth isn't just hiding geological mysteries. Maybe it's hiding history itself. Maybe we're living in a world built on the ruins of a forgotten past. And if that past was erased once before, what's to stop it from happening again? What if those buried secrets aren't just evidence of what once was, but warnings of what's coming next? If you think the mysteries of our past are wild, just wait until you hear what's happening deep beneath your feet right now. Earth isn't as still and stable as it seems. In fact, beneath the surface lies an entire world more dynamic and unpredictable than most people realise. And at the heart of that mystery is something that could impact every single one of us: the Earth's core. Most people learn in school that Earth is made up of layers: crust, mantle, outer core, and inner core. But recent findings are shaking that neat little picture. Scientists now believe that the inner core, the very heart of our planet, might be doing something completely unexpected. It's slowing down. Some researchers even suggest it might have stopped rotating entirely, or reversed direction. And while that sounds like science fiction, the consequences are anything but imaginary. The idea that the Earth's core is changing pace might seem harmless, but this rotation plays a role in everything from our planet's magnetic field to the very stability of tectonic plates. The core is basically a giant metallic engine, made mostly of iron and nickel, and it rotates independently from the rest of the Earth. But what happens when that rotation slows or changes? No one is entirely sure, but some experts warn it could disrupt the magnetic field that protects us from deadly solar radiation. That invisible shield, the magnetosphere, deflects charged particles from the sun. Without it, we'd be bombarded by solar winds that could fry satellites, collapse power grids, and even cause DNA damage in living organisms. Now, here's where it gets even stranger. The Earth's magnetic field has been weakening over the last 200 years, and rapidly so. Some scientists suggest we may be heading toward a geomagnetic reversal, where the magnetic north and south poles flip. This has happened before, many times actually, but the last one was about 780,000 years ago. During that time, the field could become unstable for centuries, even disappear temporarily. Can you imagine a world with no magnetic protection for 100 years? Climate chaos, animal migration breakdowns, and massive electronic failures are just the beginning. And if the core's rotation is tied to this, we may be witnessing the early signs of a shift no one can fully prepare for. But that's not the only anomaly deep inside Earth. Scientists have also discovered two massive blobs located near the boundary between the core and the mantle. These blobs, technically called large low shear velocity provinces, are the size of continents and denser than the surrounding mantle. No one knows exactly what they are, but they behave unlike anything else on the planet. Some theories suggest they're remnants of ancient tectonic plates. Others believe they're made of material that didn't mix with the rest of the Earth during its formation. And a few fringe theorists have even floated the idea that these blobs could be artificial or evidence of past unknown events, remnants of a planetary scale impact, or even signs of geoengineering by an ancient civilization. As if that weren't enough, new seismic studies have detected a possible fifth layer inside the inner core itself. Let that sink in. The inner core might have its own core. Scientists believe this innermost inner core is about 400 miles across and may have a different crystalline structure than the rest of the core. What does that mean? It could suggest that Earth's centre has been evolving over time in ways we don't yet understand. It might also point to dramatic past events, like planet-wide shocks or collisions, that reshaped our interior. And since we can't drill that far down, all of this is being discovered using earthquake waves and high-tech seismic modelling. It's like trying to map an alien planet using only echoes. And here's a mind-bending twist. Some geophysicists are now wondering whether Earth's inner core might not be solid at all, or not entirely. Some data suggest there could be pockets of liquid or semi-liquid material, even within what we thought was a solid iron ball, that's right. The very centre of our planet might be more fluid than firm. This has massive implications. If the inner core is more dynamic than previously believed, then our entire understanding of Earth's magnetic generation and thermal behaviour needs rethinking. Still think Earth is boring? Let's take it even further. The heat from the core is what drives convection currents in the mantle, those swirling flows of molten rock that move tectonic plates. But those currents also drive volcanic activity, earthquakes, and even mountain building. If something changes at the core, it sends ripples, literally, through the rest of the planet. That means that any change in core behaviour could lead to more earthquakes, more volcanic eruptions, or shifts in continental movement. And guess what? Earthquakes have been increasing in frequency in unusual places. Volcanic activity is rising too, with long-dormant volcanoes suddenly roaring back to life. Coincidence? Some scientists think not. They believe that even a small fluctuation in core rotation could alter mantle dynamics, increasing pressure in fault lines and volcanic zones. Others believe the changes might be part of a larger cyclical pattern, a kind of planetary heartbeat that pulses every few thousand years. But if we're in one of those pulse phases now, we might be on the brink of something big, something the surface dwellers haven't seen in tens of thousands of years. And that brings us to a theory that sounds outrageous, until you look at the data. What if the Earth periodically resets itself? What if the core, mantle, crust, and even atmosphere go through recurring upheavals, cycles of collapse and rebirth? Some researchers, like Charles Hapgood and later proponents of Earth crust displacement theory, believe the entire outer crust could shift rapidly, displacing continents and triggering mass extinctions. The idea was dismissed for decades, until modern GPS data started showing that continents do move faster than expected in certain areas, and that the entire shape of the planet's surface might be less stable than we thought. That instability could be linked directly to internal changes, like those mysterious core shifts we're just starting to understand. And while mainstream science may resist the more extreme interpretations, the evidence is piling up. From polar wander to plate acceleration to strange magnetic anomalies in the South Atlantic, Earth is sending signals that it's not as steady as we once believed. So the next time you're standing on solid ground, remember this. Beneath your feet is a churning, spinning, vibrating engine of molten metal and rock, a core that may be slowing down, shifting direction, or hiding an inner mystery no one has yet solved. The Earth's heart may be more alive than we ever imagined, and it might just hold the key to understanding not only our planet's past but its future. And if the core really is changing, then what else might be changing with it? If the mysteries buried within the Earth's core weren't mind-blowing enough, then brace yourself, because things only get stranger when you look upward into the skies. Most people think of space as a distant realm, disconnected from our daily lives. But Earth isn't just floating through a quiet vacuum. It's hurtling through space at breakneck speeds, dancing in a cosmic arena filled with invisible forces and potentially catastrophic threats. And most people have absolutely no idea what's happening. Every single second, our planet moves roughly 30 kilometers per second around the Sun. That's over 67,000 miles per hour. But we're not just orbiting the Sun. The entire solar system is spinning around the center of the Milky Way galaxy at nearly 500,000 miles per hour. On top of that, the Milky Way itself is moving through the universe. So while you're sitting still in your chair, you're actually traveling at insane speeds through a galaxy that's in constant motion. But that's not even the craziest part. The space around Earth isn't empty. It's teeming with radiation, magnetic storms, and cosmic debris. One of the most overlooked yet potentially devastating dangers we face is a solar flare. A massive burst of energy from the Sun. A flare can release the power of millions of nuclear bombs in just a few minutes. And when one is pointed at Earth, we're at the mercy of our magnetic field. Remember that magnetic field we talked about earlier? The one that's been weakening over time? Yeah, that one. If a strong enough solar storm hits us while our magnetic shield is down or in flux, the consequences could be apocalyptic. Think global power outages, fried communication satellites, aviation chaos, and even the collapse of the internet. We've seen glimpses of this before. In 1859, the Carrington event, the most powerful solar storm on record, lit up the skies with auroras as far south as the Caribbean. Telegraph systems burst into flames, and that was before we had computers, GPS, and modern electrical grids. If something like that hit today, experts say the damage could cost trillions and take decades to repair. But that's not just fear-mongering. NASA and NOAA actively monitor the sun every day for signs of such eruptions. The problem is, if we see one coming, we may only have 12 to 24 hours to prepare, and preparation means little when global infrastructure relies on satellites, power grids, and delicate electronics. But even the sun isn't the only threat. Let's talk about near-Earth objects, asteroids and comets that occasionally wander just a bit too close for comfort. Every so often, we hear about an asteroid the size of a bus narrowly missing Earth by a few 100,000 miles. Sounds like a lot, until you realise that's closer than the Moon. In 2013, a meteor exploded over Chelyabinsk, Russia, with the force of 30 atomic bombs. Over 1,500 people were injured, and it wasn't even detected until it entered our atmosphere. That's right. A 60-foot rock slipped through every modern detection system and detonated above a city of over 1 million people. And that wasn't even considered a major asteroid. So what happens when, not if, a larger one heads our way? Governments have begun discussing planetary defense systems, but in truth, we're still largely unprepared. Projects like NASA's DART mission, which recently tested asteroid deflection by crashing a spacecraft into one, are a start. But these tests are still in early stages and only target known objects. The real danger lies in the ones we haven't spotted yet. Our skies are vast and our telescopes only cover so much of them. Many near-Earth objects remain undetected, and some won't be noticed until they're already on their way. Now let's zoom out even more. Earth is part of a cosmic neighbourhood filled with potential dangers that go far beyond meteors or solar flares. Have you ever heard of rogue planets? These are massive planets not tied to any star, just floating freely through the galaxy. Scientists estimate there could be billions of them in the Milky Way alone. If even one were to pass near our solar system, its gravitational effects could throw entire planetary orbits into chaos, even ejecting planets like Earth from the habitable zone. It sounds like science fiction, but the physics are very real. And then there's the mysterious concept of gamma-ray bursts. These are the brightest and most energetic explosions in the universe, usually caused by the collapse of massive stars or merging neutron stars. If one occurred close enough to Earth, it could literally strip away the ozone layer in seconds. Without that layer, UV radiation would pour in, devastating ecosystems and causing mass extinction. Thankfully, these bursts are rare, but the universe has a long memory, and we know they've happened before. Some scientists even believe one may have contributed to a previous extinction event millions of years ago. But not all threats are catastrophic. Some are simply bizarre. Consider the concept of cosmic radiation. As we move through the galaxy, Earth is constantly bombarded with high-energy particles from beyond the solar system. These particles can pass through our bodies, our buildings, even our DNA. While Earth's atmosphere and magnetic field protect us from most of them, long-term exposure is a growing concern, especially for astronauts and future space travelers, but some researchers believe cosmic rays might even play a role in mutation and evolution. In other words, space isn't just dangerous, it may be one of the hidden forces shaping life itself. And here's a theory that's just beginning to gain traction. Some physicists believe our solar system might actually be travelling through a cosmic cloud, a dense region of space filled with interstellar dust and gas. If that's true, then Earth could be exposed to new types of particles or radiation we've never encountered before. No one knows exactly what this would mean. It might alter our atmosphere, affect weather patterns, or even increase seismic activity by heating up Earth's interior. It could also influence the sun's activity, triggering more frequent flares or altering its cycles. It's all speculative, but the fact that respected scientists are exploring it should tell you how little we really understand about the space we travel through. And then, there's the Moon. Yes, our silent, familiar companion in the sky may be weirder than we ever imagined. Its size and distance are so perfect for creating solar eclipses that some scientists call it a cosmic coincidence. But others think it might not be a coincidence at all. From ancient myths to modern conspiracy theories, the moon has been at the centre of speculation for centuries. Some researchers have noted anomalies in its composition, suggesting it might have formed in a completely different part of the solar system and was somehow captured by Earth's gravity. Others point to seismic data from Apollo missions that show the moon rings like a bell when impacted, leading to wild theories that it might be hollow or have strange internal properties. Sound crazy? Maybe. But every time we learn something new about space, it tends to challenge everything we thought we knew. The universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it's stranger than we can imagine. So while most of us go about our daily lives unaware of the cosmic forces swirling around us, the truth is this: Earth isn't a static, safe little marble floating in peace. It's a fragile, dynamic world flying through a universe filled with energy, radiation, debris, and ancient mysteries. And sometimes, all it takes is one event, a single burst, a collision, a shift in the solar wind, to remind us just how vulnerable we really are. And the question isn't whether something will happen, it's when. For all the chaos that space throws at Earth, perhaps the most shocking revelations are the ones happening right beneath our feet, in the planet itself. Most people picture the Earth as a solid rock with a molten core, but in reality, the inner workings of our planet are more mysterious and unstable than we've been led to believe. Take the tectonic plates, for example. They're massive slabs of Earth's crust that float on top of the mantle, constantly grinding, colliding, and pulling apart. The friction between these plates causes earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, all of which can be devastating. But what most people don't realise is that this movement is not just a background process. It's accelerating in certain regions, and scientists still don't fully understand why. Some researchers believe that deep beneath the plates, changes in mantle convection, the flow of molten rock, are becoming more erratic. There are areas of extreme heat rising toward the surface, places like the Yellowstone supervolcano in the United States, which is believed to sit on top of a massive magma chamber that could potentially trigger an eruption thousands of times more powerful than any nuclear bomb. If Yellowstone were to blow, it wouldn't just affect North America, it could plunge the world into a volcanic winter, disrupting agriculture, collapsing economies, and changing the climate for decades. But here's the terrifying part. While we know it's overdue, we have no way of predicting exactly when it will erupt. And there are several other supervolcanoes around the world with similar potential. But Earth doesn't just threaten us from below, it may be transforming itself in ways that are still invisible to the human eye. In recent years, scientists have detected what's being called magnetic pole drift. That's right, the magnetic north and south poles aren't fixed. They shift naturally over time. But in the last few decades, the North Pole has started moving at an unprecedented rate, travelling thousands of kilometres towards Siberia. No one knows exactly why, but it's happening faster than at any point in recorded history. Why does that matter? Because Earth's magnetic field is what protects us from cosmic radiation and solar storms. It guides everything from migratory birds to our GPS systems. If the poles were to reverse, a phenomenon that has occurred several times in geological history, the results could be disastrous. Compasses would spin uselessly, satellites could be damaged, the shielding that protects us from solar particles might weaken to the point of total failure, and it doesn't stop there. As the planet's core slowly cools and its magnetic field fluctuates, other strange phenomena have been reported. One of the most debated is the South Atlantic anomaly, a mysterious zone where the magnetic field is dangerously weak. Located between South America and Africa, this region exposes satellites to higher levels of radiation, and some spacecraft instruments have actually failed when passing through it. It's like a glitch in the Earth's magnetic software. Some speculate it could be an early sign of an impending pole reversal, or even a deeper problem within the planet's internal dynamics. But while most people imagine Earth as a singular, unified sphere, the truth is that its crust is fractured into pieces like a cracked eggshell. These cracks aren't just limited to plate boundaries. Scientists have recently discovered slabs, massive sunken pieces of tectonic plate material, buried deep in the mantle, some extending thousands of kilometers down. What's eerie is that some of these ancient slabs could still be influencing earthquakes and volcanic activity on the surface today, as they disrupt the flow of heat and mantle material. In a way, Earth remembers its past collisions, and those memories can trigger devastating events centuries or even millennia later. And while we're digging deeper, consider this. The Earth's crust is much thinner than people think. In some oceanic regions, it's only about 5 kilometers thick. That's nothing compared to the vastness of what lies below, which raises a chilling possibility. What if the planet's surface is far more fragile than we believe? There are active efforts to drill deeper into the Earth than ever before, such as the Kola Superdeep borehole in Russia, which reached over 12 kilometers down. But even then, we barely scratch the surface, and the deeper we go, the stranger things get. At those depths, temperatures soar to hundreds of degrees, and rocks behave in ways that seem almost fluid. We've found microbial life thriving in environments we once thought impossible, raising questions about what kind of unknown ecosystems might exist far beneath our feet, untouched, ancient, and completely alien to the surface world. One theory that has gained traction in fringe scientific circles is the idea of deep Earth reactors, naturally occurring nuclear reactions that may happen in the core or mantle. It sounds like science fiction, but in 1972, scientists discovered a natural nuclear reactor in Gabon, Africa. It had been active for hundreds of thousands of years. If it could happen once, could it be happening elsewhere? If energy is being generated inside the Earth beyond what we understand, then we may have to rewrite the fundamental model of how our planet operates. And while we're rewriting rules, here's another unsettling idea. The Earth might not be a perfectly balanced sphere. In fact, it's not even truly round. It's an oblate spheroid, bulging at the equator due to its rotation. But that bulge isn't fixed. Satellite data has shown that the Earth's mass distribution is shifting, likely due to melting ice caps and rising sea levels. These changes are so significant that they're literally altering the shape of the planet and its gravitational field. In practical terms, that means GPS satellites need constant recalibration. Sea levels may not rise uniformly, and the equilibrium of Earth's rotation could slowly begin to wobble, triggering changes in climate, tides, and even seismic activity. And here's a thought that rarely crosses most people's minds. What if Earth itself is part of a greater cycle, one that includes destruction and renewal on a planetary scale? Some geologists propose that every few 100 million years, continents break apart and then reconvene in a process known as supercontinent cycles. The last known supercontinent, Pangaea, broke apart roughly 175 million years ago. Now we may be witnessing the very beginning of the next cycle. New land masses could one day collide to form a future supercontinent, a slow-motion apocalypse and rebirth rolled into one. But that transformation won't be peaceful. As land masses move, oceans disappear, mountains rise, and volcanic activity intensifies. Earthquakes become more frequent and violent, and the atmospheric balance shifts dramatically, leading to global climate extremes. In essence, the Earth resets itself, wiping out many life forms in the process. It's happened before, and if history is any guide, it will happen again. So while we marvel at the stability of the ground beneath us, the reality is far more fragile and dynamic than most would dare imagine. The Earth is not a quiet, passive ball of rock. It's a churning, boiling, shifting machine of unimaginable power, one that remembers, reacts, and reshapes itself over time, and we are merely passengers on its surface, hoping it doesn't decide to change course while we're still here. For all the chaos that brews beneath Earth's surface, what happens above it is just as unsettling, perhaps even more so when you realize how little control we actually have over it. Our atmosphere, often seen as a thin, protective blanket, is more volatile and unpredictable than most realize. It acts as both a shield and a weapon. On one hand, it deflects harmful solar radiation, moderates temperature, and makes life possible. On the other, it's a dynamic, ever-changing force that's capable of turning civilization upside down in a matter of hours. Think about hurricanes, tornadoes, or atmospheric rivers, massive storms fueled by heat and moisture that have begun showing up with greater intensity, hitting places they rarely struck before. In the last 2 decades alone, we've witnessed weather events that defied scientific expectations. Once-in-a-century floods happening every few years, blistering heat waves turning cities into ovens, and cold snaps so brutal they shattered records. The climate isn't just changing, it's breaking its own rules. But one of the most alarming shifts is happening silently, invisibly, and globally: the weakening of jet streams. These high-altitude air currents regulate weather patterns across continents. But as the Arctic warms faster than the rest of the planet, a phenomenon known as Arctic amplification, the jet streams have begun to wobble. This causes unusual weather loops, like when frigid polar air dives deep into southern regions or when scorching desert heat stalls over northern cities. These disruptions aren't just inconvenient, they're dangerous. They make droughts last longer, floods more intense, and seasonal cycles increasingly chaotic. And if jet streams continue to destabilise, we may be looking at an Earth where predictable seasons become a relic of the past. Then there's the issue of air itself. Oxygen makes up about 21% of our atmosphere, a delicate balance that has remained relatively stable for millions of years. But what if that balance isn't as permanent as we think? Scientists have found evidence that in the distant past, Earth went through periods of extreme atmospheric change. During the Great Oxygenation event roughly 2.5 billion years ago, oxygen levels rose dramatically, wiping out anaerobic life and setting the stage for more complex organisms. But it wasn't a gradual, gentle change, it was a cataclysmic one, and there's reason to believe such upheavals could happen again. Not tomorrow, not next year, but in cosmic terms, soon. Already, there are signs that human activity is altering the atmosphere at an unprecedented rate. Methane and carbon dioxide levels have skyrocketed, and it's not just about warming. These gases absorb and re-emit infrared radiation, fundamentally shifting how Earth holds and releases heat. The result? A world that's heating unevenly, unpredictably and unstoppably. But heat isn't the only silent assassin. Pollution has taken a new and more insidious form: microplastics. These tiny particles are now so widespread they've been found in rain, in the air of remote mountain ranges, and even in the lungs of newborns. Every breath we take may now carry invisible contaminants that didn't exist a century ago. And while we often think of plastic as a ground-level problem, it's rising. Some microplastics are so light they can float into the upper atmosphere, creating a sort of invisible haze. What effect that will have long-term, no one really knows. But we do know this: Earth's atmosphere is no longer what it used to be. It's no longer purely natural. And yet, the greatest threat of all may come from above the atmosphere, from space. Every day, Earth is bombarded by cosmic radiation, solar winds, and the occasional meteor. Our planet's magnetic field and ozone layer usually handle these intrusions, absorbing or deflecting them, but both are under stress. The ozone hole above Antarctica, while better than it once was, still reappears annually. And solar activity is becoming increasingly unpredictable. The Sun, our life-giving star, operates on an 11-year cycle. During solar maximums, it unleashes massive flares and coronal mass ejections. These bursts can damage satellites, disrupt GPS systems, and knock out electrical grids. In 1859, a solar storm known as the Carrington event caused telegraph lines to burst into flames. If something like that hit us today, the consequences would be catastrophic. No internet, no electricity, no global communication. And with our increasing reliance on tech, such a blackout could collapse financial systems, emergency infrastructure, and even food supply chains. But here's a lesser known and far more eerie threat: atmospheric loss. It sounds like science fiction, but it's very real. Mars, once believed to have rivers, oceans, and perhaps life, lost its atmosphere billions of years ago, stripped away by solar wind after its magnetic field collapsed. Without that field, the planet became barren and cold. Could the same happen to Earth? Some scientists worry that as our magnetic field continues to weaken and shift, we could become more vulnerable to similar erosion. While the timeline would likely span millions of years, the process may have already begun, and we might not even notice until it's too late. Adding to the mystery is something called noctilucent clouds, ghostly, electric blue clouds that form high in the mesosphere, a part of the atmosphere that's usually too dry and cold for clouds to exist. These clouds have been appearing more frequently, and no one is sure why. Some link them to methane emissions rising to higher altitudes. Others suspect they're connected to changes in solar radiation. But one thing is clear: Their increase suggests that the upper atmosphere is being altered in ways we don't yet understand. And when it comes to Earth, what we don't understand tends to be the most dangerous. The very sky we look up at may be deceiving us. It appears vast, endless, and calm. But it's actually a thin, fragile film, less than 1% of Earth's radius thick, protecting us from the violent void of space. Any significant disturbance to that film, whether from within or beyond, could alter the balance of everything we know. And while Earth has survived extinction-level events in the past, from asteroid impacts to gamma-ray bursts, the modern world is far more vulnerable. We've built our civilization on assumptions: stable weather, predictable seasons, breathable air. But what happens when those assumptions no longer hold? This is the sobering reality. Earth's atmosphere is not just changing, it's unravelling in small, subtle ways that are easy to dismiss until they're impossible to ignore. And when that unravelling accelerates, we won't have centuries to react. We'll have days, hours, minutes. The warning signs are already flashing: record temperatures, failing crops, vanishing glaciers, rising oceans, and violent storms that seem to come from nowhere. And yet, the most terrifying part isn't what we know, it's what we haven't yet discovered. Because if we've learned anything from Earth's atmosphere, it's this: what looks calm on the surface is often the most dangerous thing of all. While the atmosphere plays a critical role in Earth's delicate balance, the oceans hold an even deeper set of secrets, both literally and figuratively. Covering more than 70% of the planet's surface, the oceans aren't just vast stretches of water. They're dynamic engines of life, memory, and catastrophe. Every tide, current, and temperature shift is part of a colossal, interwoven system that connects continents, controls climate, and harbours mysteries no satellite has ever captured. And while space may be the final frontier in popular imagination, the ocean is a living archive of Earth's greatest fears, closest brushes with extinction, and perhaps even the keys to our future survival. But here's what most people don't realise: the ocean isn't as stable as it looks. Beneath the calm surface lie forces so immense, so quietly destructive, that entire coastlines could be erased before a warning reaches the shore. Take, for example, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, also known as AMOC, the powerful conveyor belt of ocean currents that includes the Gulf Stream. It brings warm water from the tropics up toward Europe and sends colder water down into the deep ocean. Without this circulation, the climate across the planet would shift dramatically. Northern Europe could plunge into an ice age, while the tropics bake under unbearable heat. Scientists have recently discovered that this current is slowing at an alarming rate, and if it collapses entirely, the result wouldn't just be more storms or warmer summers. It would be a total restructuring of Earth's climate zones, and it might already be underway. But the ocean's secrets don't end with currents. The seabed is riddled with methane hydrates, crystalline structures of gas trapped in ice, often referred to as fire ice. These compounds are stable under intense pressure and cold, but they're ticking time bombs. As ocean temperatures rise, the hydrates begin to melt, releasing methane, a greenhouse gas many times more potent than carbon dioxide. A large enough release could trigger a feedback loop. Methane warms the atmosphere, which warms the ocean, which melts more hydrates, which releases more methane. This has happened before. About 55 million years ago, during the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, a sudden release of methane led to a massive spike in global temperatures, causing mass extinctions. Now satellite data and deep-sea sensors have detected bubbling methane plumes rising from the ocean floor, particularly in the Arctic, where waters are warming faster than anywhere else. If a massive release were to occur today, it wouldn't just accelerate climate change. It could collapse food systems, spark international conflicts over dwindling resources, and even trigger civilizational instability. And speaking of instability, let's talk about tsunamis, one of the most violent expressions of Earth's underwater rage. Most people think tsunamis are caused only by earthquakes, but that's just one of the threats. Underwater landslides, collapsing glaciers, and even volcanic eruptions can displace enough water to send walls of destruction racing across oceans at jetliner speeds. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, which killed more than 230,000 people in 14 countries, was caused by a single rupture on the seafloor. But there are other zones even more dangerous and even less understood. Off the coast of Norway, a massive undersea landslide known as the Storegga Slide occurred around 8,000 years ago, triggering a mega tsunami that devastated parts of northern Europe. The same region is showing signs of renewed instability. And then there's the Canary Islands, where a future volcanic collapse could send a massive wave hurtling toward the east coast of the United States. Scientists don't agree on the timeline, but the potential is there, waiting quietly beneath the surface. Even without sudden disasters, the oceans are slowly, methodically reshaping the world in ways that are easy to ignore, until they're not. Sea levels are rising, not metaphorically, not gradually, but measurably, alarmingly, and irreversibly. In the 20th century, sea levels rose about 15 centimetres. In the 21st century, we're on track to triple that, or worse. That may not sound like much, but it's enough to submerge entire islands, infiltrate freshwater reserves, and displace millions from coastal cities like Jakarta, Miami, and Dhaka. Saltwater intrusion is already poisoning agricultural land. Storm surges, once rare, are now routine, and low-lying nations are watching their borders disappear. Not because of war, but because of water. Yet what if rising seas were just the beginning? Because lurking beneath the waves are supervolcanoes. Yes, underwater volcanoes, many of which are still active and largely unmonitored. One of the largest known is Tamu Massif, located in the Pacific Ocean. It's roughly the size of the British Isles, and for years scientists didn't even realise it was a single volcano. If something like that were to erupt, it wouldn't just affect marine life. It could spew enough sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere to cool global temperatures, disrupt monsoons, and collapse food production. And that's just one. The ocean floor is dotted with thousands of such formations, many of them in tectonically active regions. Add in the potential for hydrothermal vent explosions, deep-sea chemical releases, or undersea earthquakes, and you have a recipe for planetary chaos, triggered from a place most humans have never seen and never will. And here's something even more unsettling. We don't know what else is down there. Over 80% of the ocean remains unexplored. We've mapped the surface of Mars in more detail than our own seabeds. What alien ecosystems are thriving in the crushing darkness? What ancient pathogens might be locked in silt, waiting to be disturbed by deep-sea mining? What remnants of lost civilizations might lie buried beneath centuries of sediment? The deeper we go, the stranger it gets. Scientists have discovered lakes beneath the ocean, brine pools so dense and salty that they don't mix with the seawater around them. Touching them is deadly to most marine life. They are toxic, isolated, and entirely alien. Some believe these are snapshots of early Earth conditions, or even analogues for alien oceans on moons like Europa or Enceladus. And it's not just biology that's weird down there. Strange magnetic anomalies, bizarre deep sea sounds, like the unexplained bloop recorded in the 1990s, and sudden temperature shifts have baffled researchers for decades. Some of these phenomena have never been recorded again. Others persist but defy classification. Is it tectonic activity, cryovolcanism, subterranean gas emissions, or something else entirely? Whatever the cause, one thing is clear. The ocean is not a passive feature of Earth. It is an active, breathing entity that holds more power than any human invention. All of this raises a haunting question. Are we ready for what the ocean will reveal or unleash? Because the more we learn, the more fragile our understanding becomes. We thought the ocean was simply a reservoir, a backdrop, a food source. But it is none of those things. It is a wild, untamed force that has shaped history, ended empires, and written extinction events in its waves. And it's still writing. So what happens when the water turns against us? As the ocean churns with unseen power, hiding tectonic secrets and ancient echoes of catastrophe, another battlefield lies silently above us, spanning the vast reaches of Earth's upper atmosphere and magnetic field. This invisible shield is often overlooked, yet it's the planet's most vital line of defense. Without it, Earth would be bombarded by solar radiation, cosmic rays, and lethal particles that would sterilize the surface in mere decades. The magnetosphere, generated by Earth's spinning molten iron core, deflects solar wind like a force field, but here's where the story darkens. That shield is weakening. Over the past 2 centuries, Earth's magnetic field has lost nearly 10% of its strength. Scientists don't know exactly why, but some suspect it could signal an upcoming magnetic reversal, an event where the North and South poles flip, throwing navigation systems into chaos, scrambling animal migration patterns, and possibly weakening Earth's natural protection for hundreds of years. While reversals have occurred before in geological history, the last one happened 780,000 years ago, and we're long overdue. What makes this even more unsettling is a growing anomaly, an eerie distortion known as the South Atlantic anomaly, located off the coasts of South America and Southern Africa. In this region, the magnetic field is so weak that satellites passing overhead suffer glitches, memory loss, and unexpected malfunctions. If this anomaly expands, or if it marks the beginning of a polar flip, the consequences could be global and immediate. Think increased cancer rates from radiation exposure, satellite failures disrupting communication and GPS, and entire power grids collapsing under geomagnetic stress. All of this, and yet the average person has no idea it's even happening. And while we look up at the skies with wonder, hoping to explore new worlds, the greatest space-related threat to Earth isn't a science fiction invasion, it's the Sun itself. Every 11 years, the Sun enters a new solar cycle, where its activity fluctuates from calm to violent. During solar maximums, sunspots multiply, solar flares erupt, and coronal mass ejections, massive bursts of solar plasma, can shoot directly toward Earth. If one of these CMEs hits our planet head-on, it could trigger a geomagnetic storm so powerful it would make the 1989 Quebec blackout look like a flickering light bulb. That was a relatively minor event. But in 1859, Earth experienced what's now called the Carrington event, the most intense geomagnetic storm ever recorded. Telegraph lines sparked and caught fire, auroras were visible near the equator, and electrical systems of the era, primitive as they were, shut down. Now imagine that today. With our entire civilization wired into a global electronic grid, such a storm could wipe out satellites, disable aircraft, destroy internet infrastructure, and plunge cities into darkness for months. And here's the twist. It nearly happened in 2012. A Carrington-scale event just missed Earth by a week. Scientists know these events are inevitable. It's not a question of if, but when. While the heavens threaten with plasma and polarity shifts, the Earth itself is far from calm. Deep beneath our feet lies another sleeping giant, the Yellowstone supervolcano. Nestled in Wyoming, Yellowstone is not just a national park filled with geysers and hot springs. It's the caldera of a volcanic system capable of changing life on Earth. If it were to erupt today, the consequences would be apocalyptic. Massive pyroclastic flows would destroy everything within hundreds of kilometers. Ash would blanket the United States, grounding flights, destroying crops, and contaminating water. But the real catastrophe would be climatic. A supereruption would inject vast quantities of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, forming reflective aerosols that cool the planet. Global temperatures could drop by several degrees for years, leading to widespread food shortages, economic collapse, and possibly mass migrations. The last time Yellowstone erupted, 640,000 years ago, it reshaped the continent. It has since shown signs of restlessness, ground deformation, increased seismic activity, and a rising magma chamber. Scientists monitor it obsessively, but even they admit we wouldn't be able to stop it. At best, we'd get a few days' notice, and Yellowstone isn't alone. Supervolcanoes are scattered across the globe. Campi Flegrei in Italy, Toba in Indonesia, and Taupo in New Zealand are all capable of eruptions that could dwarf anything modern humans have ever witnessed. Campi Flegrei, for instance, has shown increased pressure build-up in recent years, with gas emissions and minor quakes indicating magma movement beneath the surface. If it erupts, it could devastate Naples and disrupt Europe's climate for a decade. The Earth may seem solid beneath our feet, but it's a thin shell floating over chaos. Yet for all the planetary threats we can see and model, some of the most disturbing possibilities are the ones we haven't accounted for. What if there's something we've missed? Some factor deep in Earth's mechanics that has escaped detection? One theory gaining attention is the idea of planetary tipping points, moments where gradual change suddenly becomes irreversible. Think of the Amazon rainforest, sometimes referred to as Earth's lungs. It's approaching a tipping point due to deforestation and drought. If too much of the forest dies, it may stop absorbing carbon and instead begin emitting it, transforming from a carbon sink to a carbon source. accelerating climate change uncontrollably. And this kind of tipping point isn't limited to forests. The Greenland ice sheet, the West Antarctic ice sheet, the Arctic permafrost, all are precariously balanced. Once they pass the point of no return, feedback loops take over. Ice reflects sunlight, but when it melts, darker ocean water absorbs more heat, melting more ice. Permafrost holds methane, but when it thaws, that methane escapes, heating the atmosphere, which melts more permafrost. Each loop feeds into the next, like dominoes tumbling across the globe. But perhaps the most haunting threat isn't from nature at all, it's from ourselves. Human activity has changed the Earth so drastically that scientists now debate whether we've entered a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. Unlike previous epochs, marked by asteroid impacts or ice ages, the Anthropocene is defined by human fingerprints, plastic in the deepest ocean trenches, radioactive isotopes from nuclear tests embedded in the soil, cities so large they alter local weather patterns. We've become a geologic force, reshaping the planet with every mine, dam and highway. And while our technology has given us power, it's also introduced terrifying vulnerabilities. Artificial intelligence algorithms now manage power grids, stock markets, and even parts of national defense. Cyber warfare threatens water systems, transportation networks, and hospital databases. A single malware infection could cascade into chaos. Our civilization has grown more advanced, yes, but also more fragile. And this fragility is everywhere. The global food system depends on just a few key crops: rice, wheat, corn, grown in massive monocultures vulnerable to pests, disease and drought. A new fungus or blight could spark global famine. Our antibiotics are losing effectiveness, giving rise to drug-resistant bacteria. Freshwater sources are drying up, rivers are being rerouted, and aquifers are collapsing under demand. Meanwhile, urbanization is turning natural landscapes into concrete sprawl, isolating ecosystems and amplifying heat. We often assume that modern society can handle anything, that innovation will save us. But history tells a darker story. Civilizations rise and fall. The Roman Empire, the Maya, the Indus Valley. All were sophisticated, all were proud, and all vanished when a combination of environmental stress and political instability proved too great to overcome. The difference now? We're global. There's nowhere else to go. So when you consider Earth, not just as a rock in space, but as a living, reactive, volatile system, the question changes. It's not what's the next big threat, it's how many threats are already in motion, and how many are closer than we think. Beneath the surface of Earth's turbulent systems, its shifting plates, volatile volcanoes, and magnetic upheavals, lurks another silent antagonist: time. Not the philosophical idea of time, but the very real, calculable ticking of planetary life cycles and energy balances that have governed Earth's behaviour since its formation. Nothing on this planet is infinite, and yet we live as if its resources and systems will last forever. Every geological, climatic and ecological process has a shelf life, and once that timeline runs out, the outcomes are often irreversible. One of the most misunderstood and overlooked examples of this is Earth's geothermal energy, the internal heat-driving volcanism, plate tectonics, and the magnetic field. That heat is slowly but surely dissipating into space. When it drops below a certain threshold, tectonic activity could halt, volcanism could diminish, and the magnetic field that shields our planet could collapse altogether. This is not science fiction. Mars, once a geologically active planet, is now a silent, frozen husk. Its magnetic field vanished billions of years ago, likely because its core cooled too quickly. Earth's internal heat is what keeps its core spinning and churning. Once that rotation slows, the dynamo weakens. Without it, the planet becomes magnetically naked, defenseless in the cosmic storm. But this isn't a tomorrow problem. We're talking millions of years, right? That's what we tell ourselves to feel safe. But the truth is, some aspects of Earth's energetic decay could manifest in smaller ways far sooner. Seismic quieting, for example, could change the way tectonic stress is released. Rather than regular minor earthquakes, we may start to see longer periods of silence followed by explosive, devastating quakes as pressure builds unchecked. This pattern has already been observed in areas like the Cascadia subduction zone, where scientists fear a mega-thrust quake could strike the Pacific Northwest, with the force of hundreds of atomic bombs. Tsunami simulations show waves engulfing entire cities, while bridges, skyscrapers, and power plants collapse. These are not myths or doomsday fantasies. They are government-acknowledged, statistically likely events, and they stem from a broader truth. Earth's mechanisms aren't steady. They're decaying, shifting, and evolving toward unknown outcomes. Equally alarming is what lies just beneath the biosphere, what's called the deep biosphere, a hidden world teeming with microbial life. For decades, scientists believed life was limited to the thin crust of Earth's surface. But then, they drilled deeper, and what they found rewrote biology textbooks. More than 90% of Earth's microbial biomass may live underground, in hot, pressurized environments thought inhospitable. This subterranean life has existed for billions of years, evolving separately, adapting to heat, chemicals, and darkness. Some scientists worry, what if these organisms are pathogenic? Or worse, what if disruptions like fracking, deep mining, and geothermal drilling unearth bacteria and viruses the surface biosphere isn't prepared for? We've already seen permafrost thawing in Siberia releasing anthrax spores, buried for decades. What else might be lurking miles below the surface, encased in stone, waiting for the right trigger to escape? And this leads us to another sobering topic: extinction cycles. Earth has endured 5 major mass extinctions, each wiping out vast percentages of life. The Permian Triassic extinction, also called the Great Dying, eradicated over 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial species. These events weren't just sudden, they were triggered by slow-building planetary changes that reached a critical point. Ocean acidification, methane releases, asteroid impacts, and supervolcanoes all played roles, but many extinction events appear to coincide with magnetic reversals, solar radiation spikes, and planetary cooling or heating phases. Some scientists now believe we may be entering the 6th mass extinction, not in some distant future, but right now. Species are vanishing at a rate 1,000 times the natural background rate. Pollinators like bees and butterflies are collapsing. Amphibians are declining globally. Coral reefs are bleaching and dying at a pace unseen in recorded history. The food web is fraying, and with it, the systems that stabilize climate, water, and oxygen. We often think extinction is something that happens to animals, but the dominoes always end with us. Technology, ironically, may accelerate the collapse. Take artificial intelligence and biotech, for example. As our species gains the power to edit genes, build synthetic life, and create AI systems that learn and evolve independently, we enter a realm of unpredictable outcomes. What happens if we genetically engineer a crop that inadvertently outcompetes native species? Or release a bioengineered virus with unintended mutations? What if an AI, optimized for efficiency, begins to see humans as a liability in its logic matrix? These aren't just speculative nightmares. They're real debates happening in labs and think tanks right now. The convergence of advanced science with planetary instability is like placing dynamite on a fault line. One misstep, one overlooked algorithm, and the entire equilibrium could unravel. Meanwhile, Earth's interconnected systems are becoming increasingly synchronized. Forest fires in the Amazon reduce rainfall, which affects crop yields in Africa. Melting glaciers in the Himalayas feed rivers that supply billions with drinking water. Those rivers are drying. Ocean currents that regulate heat across the planet are slowing, and if they stop entirely, like the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, AMOC, Europe could enter a mini-ice age while tropical regions overheat. Everything is connected, and small changes can have global consequences. This is what scientists refer to as global coupling, and it's accelerating. As climate models become more accurate, they show not just isolated risks, but compound ones. Multiple crises happening simultaneously. A flood here, a drought there, a disease outbreak in between. Each strain weakens the system until recovery becomes impossible. But perhaps the most chilling question of all is this: what if Earth is trying to reset? Not consciously, but systemically. Every planetary system, from ecosystems to magnetic fields, has a limit. When stress exceeds that limit, the system collapses and reorganizes, often violently. Just as a fever is the body's way of purging infection, perhaps extreme weather, rising seas, and tectonic instability are Earth's fever, a purge of imbalance, and we, as the dominant species, may be the infection. That's not a moral judgment. It's a biological perspective. One species consuming the majority of resources, altering the climate, polluting the biosphere, and driving extinction at record pace. Such behaviour rarely ends well in nature. When a species overshoots its niche, collapse follows, always. Yet amid this bleak panorama, there is a strange beauty. Earth is still alive, still mysterious, still holding secrets we've yet to uncover. New species are discovered daily in the most unexpected places. Thermal vents, Antarctic lakes, caves sealed for millions of years. The planet is not static, it evolves, adapts, and sometimes it surprises us. But surprise can swing both ways, toward revelation or reckoning. So we stand at a threshold, not of extinction necessarily, but of transformation. Our understanding of Earth must evolve beyond maps and satellites. We must see it as a single breathing organism, dynamic, complex and unforgiving of ignorance. The old model of human supremacy must give way to something wiser, humbler, and more in tune with planetary boundaries, because Earth doesn't need saving. It needs understanding, it needs restraint, and maybe, just maybe, it needs silence, if only so we can hear what it's trying to tell us. As we arrive at one of the most quietly disturbing aspects of Earth's story, we must confront something that often escapes public conversation: what lies beneath the oceans. While the skies above us and the ground beneath our feet command much of our attention, it is the abyssal depths of our oceans that hold the greatest mysteries and potentially the greatest threats. Covering more than 70% of Earth's surface, the ocean is not just a body of water, it is a vast living system, intricately connected to every aspect of life on this planet. But for all our technological advancements, we've explored less than 10% of the ocean floor. That means over 90% remains unseen, unmapped and unknown. In the age of Mars rovers and space telescopes, we still don't know what's lurking in our own backyard. And what little we have discovered has both astonished and unsettled scientists. In the darkness of the deep sea, organisms live in crushing pressure, total darkness, and toxic environments. Creatures like the vampire squid, bioluminescent jellyfish, and 20-foot-long giant squid are not fantasy, they are documented reality. But these are the least of it. Near hydrothermal vents and subduction zones, microbial colonies thrive off chemicals instead of sunlight, forming the base of entirely alien ecosystems. These organisms are so strange that NASA studies them to learn how life might survive on other planets. But what if, in our quest to understand them, we disturb something we don't fully comprehend? Deep-sea mining and drilling are already piercing these ancient ecosystems, and unlike surface environments, the deep ocean does not recover easily. A single disruption can collapse a food chain that took millions of years to evolve. Entire species could go extinct before we even know they exist. But it gets darker, literally and figuratively. In the Hadal Zone, the deepest trenches like the Mariana, depths exceed 36,000 feet. That's more than 6 miles straight down. These trenches are not just geological anomalies, they're repositories. Organic matter, pollutants, and sometimes even nuclear waste have found their way into these forgotten vaults. What's been dumped down there over decades, some of it intentionally, some accidentally, is largely undocumented. Radiation traces have been found in sediment samples from the Pacific. Microplastics, now present in every marine organism tested, have even been discovered in the guts of amphipods living at the bottom of the Challenger Deep. There is no escape. What we do at the surface echoes downward, invisibly poisoning the ocean's foundation. Now imagine what happens when a massive earthquake disrupts one of these sediment layers, or when a deep-sea drill ruptures a methane hydrate pocket. Frozen methane trapped under pressure. These pockets exist in abundance along continental shelves. Scientists warn that warming ocean temperatures could destabilize them, releasing massive amounts of methane, a greenhouse gas far more potent than carbon dioxide. If released in large volumes, it could cause an abrupt temperature spike in Earth's atmosphere, destabilizing weather systems, collapsing agriculture, and accelerating the already staggering pace of climate breakdown. It's a ticking time bomb resting under the seafloor, held in place by temperature and pressure. If we disturb it, intentionally or not, the feedback loop could be catastrophic. But the ocean doesn't only store danger, it hides time. Underneath layers of sediment lie the preserved remains of Earth's ancient past. Fossils, chemical signatures, and even DNA fragments are sealed in marine mud, recording epochs long gone. In some of the deepest cores ever drilled, scientists discovered microorganisms that had been dormant for millions of years, reanimated simply by adding water and warmth. This raises serious ethical and scientific questions. What happens if we bring something back that our immune systems or ecosystems aren't prepared to handle? What if ancient pathogens, long thought extinct, are not only alive but capable of adapting to modern biology? These aren't speculative horror movie plots. They are real considerations being discussed at international biosafety summits. Equally disturbing is the political and economic scramble for what lies beneath the sea floor. Countries and corporations are racing to claim rights over mineral-rich regions, particularly polymetallic nodules, chunks of rare metals that could power batteries and next-gen technologies. But extracting them would require vacuuming up entire swaths of the ocean floor, destroying habitats, stirring up plumes of sediment, and potentially disrupting carbon cycles we don't fully understand. The irony is brutal. We destroy the planet in order to build the technology that might save it. But at what cost? Once these environments are gone, they're gone forever. No amount of money or innovation can bring back a micro-ecosystem that took 1 billion years to form. Let's not forget the ocean's role in regulating Earth's temperature. It absorbs over 90% of the heat trapped by greenhouse gases. Without it, our surface temperatures would be unbearable. But this buffering comes at a cost. The oceans are heating faster than ever before in recorded history. Marine heat waves are becoming more frequent, bleaching coral reefs, suffocating fish, and altering migratory patterns. Entire food webs are shifting, and with them, the economies and cultures that depend on them. Coastal communities are the first to feel the sting. Rising seas, stronger storms, disappearing fisheries, but the ripple effects won't stop there. As fish stocks collapse and marine biodiversity declines, food insecurity will spread, geopolitical tensions will rise, and millions may be displaced. The ocean, once a source of abundance, becomes a source of crisis. Yet even in the face of this unravelling, we still treat the ocean as an afterthought, out of sight, out of mind. We romanticize its beauty while ignoring its warnings, but the signs are all around us: whale strandings, dead zones, algal blooms, disappearing ice. The sea is screaming, and we respond with silence. But that silence won't last forever. One way or another, the ocean always responds, and when it does, it doesn't whisper, it roars. So as we peer into the future, we must ask, are we brave enough to listen? Brave enough to admit that we don't know what's down there, and that not knowing should give us pause? The deepest parts of our planet are not just physical spaces. They are metaphors for our own ignorance, our arrogance, and our insatiable desire to conquer what we don't understand. But perhaps some places aren't meant to be conquered. Perhaps the ocean's greatest lesson isn't about what it holds, but what it protects us from. And if we're not careful, it may stop protecting us altogether. If you want to truly understand the peril Earth faces, you have to stop looking at disasters as isolated events and start connecting the dots. Because while natural forces shape our world, it's human greed, unchecked and relentless, that accelerates the unravelling, and nowhere is that more evident than in our exploitation of the planet's most vital resources. From the forests that breathe for us to the minerals that run our technology, we've treated Earth like a limitless warehouse. But warehouses can be emptied, systems can collapse, and when the systems we're talking about are ecological, the consequences don't stop with stock shortages. They cascade into crises that no society, no matter how advanced, is prepared for. Let's start with the lungs of the planet, our forests. They aren't just collections of trees, they're complex living systems that regulate rainfall, stabilise soil, house millions of species, and serve as Earth's most reliable carbon sinks. The Amazon alone stores over 100 billion metric tons of carbon. But that storage is rapidly being erased. Illegal logging, cattle ranching, and industrial agriculture have turned entire swaths of this ancient ecosystem into ghost lands. In 2022 alone, the Amazon lost more than 10,000 square kilometres of forest. That's like erasing a section the size of Lebanon in 1 year. A tragedy. We're not just destroying trees, We're releasing centuries of stored carbon, displacing indigenous peoples, and exterminating species that haven't even been named yet. And it's not just Brazil. Southeast Asia's rainforests are being gutted for palm oil. African forests vanish for timber. Even temperate forests in the US, Canada, and Russia are under assault, all for short-term profit. But forests are just the beginning. Let's talk about water, arguably the most crucial resource for life on Earth. You'd think something so essential would be protected, managed, and conserved. Instead, we pollute it, privatize it, and overdraw it like it's never going to run out. The Colorado River, which supports over 40 million people, is drying up. Entire reservoirs like Lake Mead and Lake Powell have hit record lows. In India, groundwater depletion has reached critical levels, and cities like Chennai have literally run out of water in recent years. Cape Town narrowly avoided day zero by cutting consumption by over 50% in 2018. But how long can such emergency tactics hold? Meanwhile, freshwater aquifers take thousands of years to refill, but we're draining them in decades. Once they're gone, that's it. No backup plan, no synthetic replacement, just thirst. And if the water crisis sounds bad, the soil crisis is even worse. Topsoil, the thin, fragile layer that grows 95% of our food, is disappearing. Eroded by over-farming, stripped by deforestation, and poisoned by chemicals, fertile soil is vanishing at a rate of 24 billion tons per year. Let that sink in. We are losing the very ground we depend on to survive. Industrial agriculture has turned living soil into dust. Monoculture crops like corn, wheat, and soy suck the life out of the land, while fertilizers and pesticides build up toxicity that eventually kills beneficial microbes. Without soil, there is no food. Without food, there is no civilization. And this isn't a distant warning, it's already happening. Countries like China and India have seen crop yields decline in regions affected by desertification. Africa's Sahel region is expanding, swallowing arable land. In the US, the Dust Bowl wasn't a one-time event. It was a preview of what happens when we push land too far. But perhaps the most insidious example of resource exploitation is hidden in the devices we carry every day. Smartphones, laptops, electric cars all rely on rare earth elements and precious metals like cobalt, lithium, and tantalum. The demand for these materials has created new forms of modern-day slavery. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, children dig through toxic mud to extract cobalt, earning less than $1 a day. Lithium mines in South America's Lithium Triangle are draining fragile desert water supplies. Entire indigenous communities are being pushed out, poisoned, and silenced. Also, the rest of the world can enjoy clean energy and fast tech. The ugly truth is that sustainability for some comes at the cost of suffering for others. And let's not forget oil and gas. Despite decades of warnings and evidence linking fossil fuels to climate change, the world still subsidizes oil to the tune of hundreds of billions annually. That's right. Governments are paying companies to destroy the climate. Pipeline projects slash through sacred lands. Oil spills coat coastlines. Fracking poisons aquifers and triggers earthquakes. And when fossil fuels are extracted, processed, and burned, they release carbon that's been buried for millions of years, carbon our atmosphere cannot handle. We're quite literally dragging the past into the present to fuel a future that's falling apart. But even after all this, some still ask, why does it matter? It matters because ecosystems don't operate in isolation. You can't destroy one without affecting another. Chop down forests and rainfall patterns change. Drain aquifers and agriculture collapses. Poison rivers and fish die. Mine too deeply and earthquakes rise. Pollute the air and diseases spread. It's all connected. Every single action echoes through the system. And at some point, the system breaks. You might be thinking, but aren't we making progress? Sure, we have environmental treaties, conservation efforts, and green technology. But progress is slow, fragmented, and often reversed by political will or corporate lobbying. The Paris Agreement, non-binding, plastic bans, only a fraction of global plastic waste is even recycled. Renewable energy, it's growing, but fossil fuels still dominate the global energy mix. It's like trying to mop the floor while the sink is still overflowing. Until we address the root cause, our obsession with endless growth and consumption, nothing will truly change. And this leads us to a harsh but necessary truth. Earth is not a machine. It's not a resource bank. It's not here to serve us. It's a living system with limits, cycles, and thresholds. When we treat it like a warehouse, we degrade it. When we treat it like a landfill, we poison it. And when we ignore its warnings, it eventually stops giving them. Instead, it reacts. And those reactions, heat waves, wildfires, pandemics, food shortages, mass extinction, aren't punishments, they're consequences. The scariest part? We've seen this before. The collapse of civilizations like the Maya, Mesopotamians and Easter Islanders didn't happen overnight. They eroded slowly as environmental degradation piled up, until one day the system snapped. Sound familiar? Because we're following the same script. Only this time, it's not one region or empire, it's the entire planet. And unlike past civilizations, we don't have somewhere else to go when the damage is done. So what happens next? That depends on whether we continue to strip Earth for parts, or finally recognize that our survival is tied to its health. Because here's the twist. The Earth doesn't need us to survive. We need it. And it's only by respecting its boundaries that we can hope to stay within them. We've built cities that touch the clouds, machines that talk back, and rockets that kiss the stars. We control the temperature in our homes with a swipe, summoned food to our doors with a tap, and command the power of the atom in our hands. And somewhere along the way, we convinced ourselves of something deeply dangerous, that we've conquered nature, that Earth is ours to command, tame, and reshape, that we've evolved beyond the need to fear what once humbled us. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. That sense of control is a lie, a beautifully crafted illusion. Because for all our innovation, wealth, and power, we're still guests on this planet, and Earth doesn't negotiate. Let's talk about earthquakes. We can't see them coming, we can't stop them, and despite decades of research, we still don't fully understand them. One second you're walking downtown and the next the ground beneath you is liquefying. Buildings are crumbling like sandcastles, and highways are buckling like paper. In 2011, Japan, one of the most technologically advanced nations on Earth, was rocked by a magnitude 9.0 quake. Entire towns vanished in moments. The Fukushima nuclear plant was pushed past its limits, leaking radioactive material into the ocean. Damage estimates crossed $235 billion, making it the costliest natural disaster in history. And it all started with a tremor from deep inside the Earth, a reminder that tectonic plates don't care about GDPs or military strength. And yet what's even more humbling is that earthquakes are not isolated. They trigger tsunamis, landslides, even volcanic eruptions. And while we're on the subject of volcanoes, let's address another illusion, the idea that we can predict and prevent their fury. In 1991, Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines erupted after centuries of silence. Scientists were watching it. They had warning signs. But the sheer scale of the eruption still took everyone by surprise. It launched 10 billion tons of magma and ash into the sky, cooling the Earth's temperature globally for 2 years. That's the power of a single mountain. Now imagine Yellowstone. Yes, that Yellowstone. The supervolcano sleeping under a beloved US national park. If it ever woke fully, it could bury the Midwest in ash, kill crops globally, and cause a volcanic winter, and we wouldn't be able to do a thing to stop it. Then there's the climate. People like to think of climate change as slow, predictable, manageable, but that assumption is unraveling faster than expected. What we're seeing now isn't just gradual warming, it's systems spinning out of control. Polar vortex breakdowns, wildfires creating their own weather, rainfall that turns highways into rivers within hours. Just last year, parts of Europe were drenched with more rain in 2 days than they usually get in 2 months. Cities built on stability are now collapsing under chaos. No infrastructure, no matter how modern, is ready for a climate that doesn't play by the old rules. And it's not just physical disasters, there are biological ones. Pandemics, once thought to be ancient relics, are now very real and very modern. The COVID-19 outbreak paralysed the world in weeks. Planes were grounded, economies shattered, hospitals overflowed, and despite all our intelligence, billions of dollars in research, and 24/7 media coverage, the virus moved faster than we did. We couldn't stop it, we could only react. And the scariest part, it won't be the last. Zoonotic diseases, those jumping from animals to humans, are on the rise. and the more we encroach on wild habitats, the more likely we are to encounter viruses we've never seen before and have no immunity against. Now let's zoom out even further. Asteroids, solar flares, cosmic radiation. These aren't science fiction threats. In 2013, a meteor the size of a house exploded over Chelyabinsk, Russia, injuring over 1,500 people and shattering windows across a massive area. It arrived with no warning. NASA later admitted they hadn't seen it coming because it approached from the sun's direction, making it invisible to telescopes, and that was a small one. The asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs was over 6 miles wide. If a rock like that was hurtling toward Earth, we might not have the technology or time to stop it. Our entire civilization, everything we've built, could be erased in an instant, not because we were evil, but because we were arrogant. So why does this illusion of control persist? Why do we keep building beachfront mansions when sea levels are rising? Why do we ignore fault lines, flatten forests, and build dams in places that flood? It's because we've mistaken convenience for invincibility. We believe that just because we can build something we should, that if disaster strikes, someone will figure it out. That technology will save us. But tech isn't a shield, it's a tool. And like any tool, it's only as effective as the wisdom guiding it. But wisdom is in short supply, because the same systems that brought us electricity, vaccines, and satellites are also fueling ecological collapse, social inequality, and environmental arrogance. We've monetized everything, even risk, even destruction. The companies responsible for the most pollution are often the most profitable. The industries that ignore climate warnings get bailed out, and those trying to raise alarms are labelled extremists or radicals. It's a system built not on sustainability, but on denial, and denial has consequences. The illusion of control makes us slow to respond, unprepared for emergencies, and numb to escalating dangers. It leads to complacency until it's too late, until the floodwaters are at our door, until the sky turns orange from wildfire smoke, until our crops fail, until we realize the systems we thought we controlled are now collapsing under their own weight. But here's the kicker. Even though Earth doesn't answer to us, we still have influence. Not control, but influence. We can guide, we can adapt, we can build with nature instead of against it. Indigenous cultures have been doing this for thousands of years, living in harmony with the land, reading the signs, moving with the rhythms of the earth instead of trying to dominate them. But that wisdom was dismissed, erased, colonized, replaced with concrete, profit, and policies that pretend disasters only happen to other people. Now, as our illusion crumbles, maybe it's time to listen. Maybe it's time to remember that being human doesn't make us rulers, it makes us stewards, temporary tenants, and our rent is overdue. So what do we do with this knowledge? Panic? Despair? No, we recalibrate, we act, we prepare. Because knowing we're not in control is actually liberating. It reminds us to stay humble, to stay vigilant, and to stop pretending we can tech our way out of everything. Nature is not a machine to be programmed, it's a force to be respected, and yet, even now, the illusion still lingers. Some will watch this and scoff, others will turn the channel. But for those still here, still listening, still questioning, it's time to peel back the curtain, to challenge the myths we've told ourselves, to see the world not as something we own, but something we're a part of. Because the illusion of control may be strong, but the truth is even stronger, and what comes next might change everything. There's a strange irony in human behaviour. We can hear a faint ding from our phones across a crowded room, but we somehow miss the deafening warnings Earth is screaming at us. These aren't subtle hints, these are catastrophic wake-up calls. Wildfires that consume entire towns, hurricanes so massive they span continents, oceans turning acidic, glaciers vanishing, and still we hit snooze, over and over again. But here's the brutal truth. Nature doesn't wait, and the volume of these warnings, it's only going up. Let's start with something as basic as temperature. You've heard it before. The Earth is warming, but that phrase doesn't do it justice. The real story is far more disturbing. In the past decade, we've recorded the hottest years in human history. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. In 2023 alone, parts of the Middle East saw air temperatures hit 150 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not weather. That's an unlivable furnace. And yet, it's becoming normal. But it's not just about heat. It's about what heat unlocks. Warmer air holds more moisture, which fuels storms. Stronger, wetter, longer storms. Look at what happened in Pakistan in 2022. 1/3 of the entire country was underwater. 1 in 3. That's not just a flood. That's a national drowning. Millions were displaced. Infrastructure crumbled. Crops failed. And here's the kicker. Scientists had been warning about this for years. It wasn't a surprise. It was a prophecy fulfilled. Still think these are isolated incidents? Let's talk about the Amazon. The lungs of the Earth. Once a thriving ecosystem, it's now coughing up carbon instead of absorbing it. For the first time in recorded history, some parts of the Amazon are emitting more CO2 than they capture. It's like watching a firefighter pour gasoline on the flames. But we're still cutting it down. For beef, for soy, for timber. All while pretending we're fighting climate change. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. And then there's Antarctica. That distant frozen expanse we like to imagine as stable and eternal. But in 2023, satellite data revealed that Antarctic sea ice hit its lowest level ever recorded. Some scientists openly admitted they were gobsmacked, because it wasn't just low, it was off the charts. The very boundaries of climate science are being rewritten in real time, and the only thing growing faster than the damage is our disbelief. It's not just science labs noticing this. Indigenous communities, those who have lived closest to nature for centuries, have been reporting these shifts long before headlines caught on. Ice breaking earlier, animals disappearing, rivers running dry where they never did before. But their warnings were dismissed, silenced, ignored. Now, their lived experience is being backed by the very data we once claimed was missing. Turns out the oldest wisdom was the most accurate all along, and yet, as the planet screams louder, our response remains muted. We build more pipelines, drill in the Arctic, subsidize oil companies, celebrate greenwashing PR stunts as if planting a few trees will erase centuries of damage. Meanwhile, the oceans are rising, fast. Entire island nations like Tuvalu and Kiribati are already planning for extinction. Not hypothetically, literally. They're digitizing their cultures in case their homelands vanish beneath the waves. Just imagine that, uploading your identity because your country is about to drown. That's not science fiction. That's tomorrow. You might think governments would act swiftly, mobilized like they did during wars or pandemics. But most aren't, because action threatens profit. It challenges the status quo, and in many cases leaders are still tangled in lies, funded by industries who know the truth but choose to bury it. Exxon knew about climate change in the 1970s. Let that sink in. Over 50 years ago, their own scientists predicted exactly what's happening now. But instead of warning the world, they launched a campaign of doubt, of denial. And they made trillions in the process. It's not just oil, it's fast fashion dumping chemicals into rivers. It's industrial agriculture draining aquifers and killing soil. It's tech companies mining rare earth metals without a plan to clean up the mess. It's endless consumption, masters progress. And the Earth? It's not fooled. It keeps sending louder signals, more droughts, more pandemics, more heat waves that melt asphalt. But are we even listening? Maybe the most haunting part is this. We act surprised every time, as if each disaster is a freak occurrence, as if the planet hasn't been warning us consistently for decades. We act like victims of fate when in truth we've been complicit architects of our own destruction. But it's not too late. Not yet. That's the part people forget. The Earth isn't out to destroy us. It's just reacting to imbalance, to abuse, to exploitation. If we listen, truly listen, there's still time to change, to transition, to protect what's left and even restore some of what we've lost. But it starts with honesty, with confronting how far we've strayed from harmony. And that honesty, it's in short supply. The media, for all its reach, often softens the truth. Calls climate breakdown bad weather, frames oil spills as incidents, censors images that might disturb viewers instead of challenging them to act. But the Earth isn't censoring itself. It's unleashing the raw, uncensored reality of collapse. Every fire, every flood, every crop failure is a headline we should have seen coming. We need to reframe the narrative. Stop seeing nature as the enemy. Stop blaming acts of God for things we've engineered through greed. Start recognizing that every hurricane intensified by warm oceans, every disease emerging from ecological imbalance, is a response, not a punishment. A response to our choices. And that brings us to a hard question. Are we even capable of listening anymore? Or have we drowned out the Earth's voice with distractions, filters, and endless scrolling? Are we waiting for the perfect crisis before we admit the crisis is already here? Because if we keep ignoring the sirens, one day there will be silence. No more warnings, just consequences. And what's coming next might make even the loudest disasters we've seen so far feel like whispers. If you've been wondering why the planet keeps getting sicker while profits keep soaring, the answer is simple: greed. Not the petty kind that makes someone keep spare change instead of donating it. We're talking about corporate greed, strategic, systemic, and so deeply embedded in global industries that it's practically invisible unless you know where to look. And that's the terrifying part. The real villains aren't hiding in shadows. They're in boardrooms, smiling for the press, announcing eco-friendly initiatives, while quietly signing deals that poison rivers and melt ice caps. Let's pull back the curtain. Start with the fossil fuel giants. Everyone knows they're bad, but what's worse is how long they've known the truth and chosen to hide it. In the 1970s, Exxon's internal scientist warned the company that burning fossil fuels would destabilize the climate, increase global temperatures, and trigger sea level rise. Their response? Not to warn the public, not to stop drilling, but to invest in public disinformation campaigns that cast doubt on climate science. For decades, they spent millions shaping public opinion, delaying legislation, and funding politicians who'd vote in their favour. That's not just negligence, that's sabotage, and they're not alone. BP, Shell, Chevron, all the major players followed suit. They've known, they've always known. But warnings don't boost stock prices, so instead, they spent more on branding than on reducing emissions. You've probably seen the commercials, green logos, families hiking in nature, soft music playing in the background. We care, they say. But behind those feel-good ads are oil rigs drilling in the Arctic and pipelines slicing through sacred lands. It's the art of distraction. Make people feel like something is being done, while continuing business as usual. But fossil fuels are only one piece of the puzzle. Enter agriculture. Industrial farming is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, not to mention deforestation, soil degradation, and water contamination. You'd think companies would be held accountable, but instead, they're celebrated for feeding the world, even as they monopolize seed patents, destroy biodiversity, and exploit cheap labor in the global south, all while selling processed, chemical-laden food that damages human health. And yet, every time a new drought hits or a crop fails, they point fingers at nature, never at their own unsustainable practices. Let's not forget about fast fashion. Brands pump out new collections weekly, knowing full well that millions of garments will end up in landfills or incinerators. Rivers in Bangladesh run blue from dye waste. Factory workers breathe in toxic fibres for poverty wages. But Zara or H&M will slap a conscious collection label on a few shirts and pretend they're saving the world. And here's the twisted part. Consumers buy it. Because when guilt meets convenience, greenwashing wins. And what about tech? Ah yes, the digital age's darlings. From smartphones to data centres, the tech industry consumes an enormous and growing amount of energy. Mining for lithium, cobalt and rare earth elements destroys landscapes and displaces indigenous communities. But that never makes the product launch. You don't see Apple unveiling the iPhone with a backdrop of devastated forests or child labour in Congolese mines. You see sleek stages, crisp visuals, promises of a better world through consumption. Everywhere you look, there's a pattern: extract, exploit, rebrand, repeat. Even climate solutions are being monetized. Carbon credits are a brilliant scam. A company can keep polluting as long as it offsets its emissions by funding tree planting or renewable projects on paper. In reality, many of those offsets don't actually remove carbon or don't last. Forests burn, projects fail. But the companies still get to claim their net zero. It's the equivalent of eating 5 burgers, walking around the block, and calling it healthy living. And then there's the banking system. You'd think they'd be risk averse, right? But guess what? Since the Paris Agreement in 2015, the world's largest banks have poured over $4.5 trillion into fossil fuel projects. Yes, trillion. With a T, while publicly pledging support for climate goals, they privately bankroll the exact industries undermining those goals. It's like handing matches to arsonists, then donating to the fire department for good PR, and it gets worse. Many of these corporations actively lobby against climate regulations. They write policies, not just influence them. They draft bills that strip environmental protections, push for deregulation, and limit the rights of communities to fight back, and they often win. Because they don't just have money, they have power, and in politics, power is the only currency that matters. But where does that leave the rest of us? Here's the brutal truth. We are being gaslit on a global scale. We're told the problem is plastic straws, while oil companies spill millions of barrels into oceans. We're told to recycle, while 71% of emissions come from just 100 companies. We're told to bike more, while governments build new highways and airports. Every individual action is good, but it's not enough. And pretending it is? That's by design. It keeps us busy, distracted, blaming ourselves instead of the system that benefits from our confusion. Because here's what scares corporations more than anything: awareness, public scrutiny, collective action. If people stop believing the lies, if they start demanding accountability, if they boycott the greenwashing and vote with their wallets, then the system has to change. And change threatens their profit margins, so they'll do everything they can to maintain the illusion. They'll flood social media with eco-influencers who promote sustainable shopping. They'll sponsor climate conferences with their logos plastered across banners. They'll create entire divisions devoted to corporate social responsibility, while lobbying behind closed doors to weaken climate bills. But the cracks are starting to show. Whistleblowers are speaking out. Independent journalists are exposing the truth. Activists are organising, suing, disrupting. And people are waking up. Slowly maybe, but it's happening. Because the consequences can no longer be ignored. Not when homes burn down, not when food prices spike, not when air becomes unbreathable. And here's the good news. We still have leverage. Every time we hold a company accountable, every time we vote for leaders who prioritise climate action, every time we choose products that align with our values, we chip away at the foundation of corporate denial. We make it harder for greed to hide behind green. But we can't let up. Because these companies, they're counting on fatigue, on apathy, on distraction. They're betting we'll care for a few news cycles and then move on. And honestly, that's what we've done in the past. But maybe this time we don't. Maybe this time we connect the dots. Maybe this time we name names and demand receipts. Because the Earth isn't dying, it's being killed. And the ones doing it, they're still profiting. For now. For all the destruction, denial, and corporate sabotage, there's something else growing. Quietly, defiantly, and with more strength than the billion-dollar lies it's up against. Resistance. In the shadow of environmental collapse, a global uprising has been taking root. It's not led by billionaires or governments. It's led by the very people these systems try to silence. Youth, indigenous leaders, local communities, and everyday individuals who've had enough. Let's begin with the most undeniable force in the climate conversation right now: youth activists. They're young, often underestimated, but they've become impossible to ignore. Greta Thunberg is the obvious face, but this movement is much bigger than one girl with a sign. Across every continent, millions of young people are organising school strikes, marches, online campaigns, and legal actions to force the world to pay attention. What sets them apart? They're not asking for permission, they're demanding justice. These youth-led movements aren't watered down with diplomatic language or corporate partnerships. They're raw, angry, and unapologetically urgent. And why shouldn't they be? It's their future that's on the line. The generations before them built empires of pollution and profit. Now, it's the youngest among us who are standing in the ruins, asking why the hell no one stopped it, and more importantly, refusing to let it continue. But young people aren't alone. Indigenous communities have been resisting environmental exploitation for centuries. Long before hashtags and climate conferences, they were protecting the land, not for profit, but because it's sacred. And now the world is finally starting to realise they've always had the answers. While governments argue over emissions targets, indigenous groups are actually reducing deforestation, preserving biodiversity and restoring balance. simply by fighting to protect what's theirs. Look at the Amazon. In areas managed by indigenous communities, deforestation is dramatically lower, not because of tech or corporate pledges, but because these communities see the forest not as resources, but as relatives. They don't separate themselves from nature. They are part of it, and that worldview might be the key to everything. Still, the fight is dangerous. Indigenous land defenders are being harassed, arrested, and even killed for standing up to mining companies, oil pipelines, and illegal loggers. But they keep fighting, because they know something many have forgotten. Once the land is gone, there's no bringing it back. And they're not just resisting, they're winning. In Canada, the Wet'suwet'en Nation has stood firm against pipelines crossing their unceded territory. In the US, the Standing Rock Sioux sparked a global movement against the Dakota Access Pipeline. In the Philippines, indigenous leaders are leading the charge against destructive dams and mining projects. Their victories may not make headlines, but they matter. They protect ecosystems, they inspire others, and they send a message: this land is not for sale. Meanwhile, grassroots movements are gaining momentum worldwide. These are not just protests, they are revolutions in the making. From local farmers defending their soil to urban activists demanding green housing, the scope of these movements is breathtaking. What connects them is not money or power, it's purpose. A refusal to accept that this is the best we can do. Take the rise of climate litigation. In the past few years, communities and activists have taken governments and corporations to court, and won. In the Netherlands, a landmark case forced the government to cut emissions faster. In Germany, the Constitutional Court ruled that the country's climate law violated young people's rights. In the US, a group of children is suing the federal government for endangering their future through fossil fuel policies. These aren't symbolic actions, they're real, binding legal victories, and they're reshaping the conversation from what's allowed to what's just. Even in the financial world, the pressure is mounting. Divestment campaigns are pushing universities, pension funds, and cities to pull their money out of fossil fuels. Over $40 trillion has already been divested. That's trillion with a T. Because if the industry doesn't respond to morality, maybe it'll respond to losing money. And while billionaires shoot themselves into space, communities on the ground are building the future, literally. Renewable energy projects, local cooperatives, regenerative agriculture, zero-waste cities, these aren't pipe dreams, they're happening. In Bangladesh, solar power is electrifying rural villages. In Kenya, community-owned wind farms are generating clean energy and revenue. In Barcelona, citizens reclaimed control of their water supply from a private company and made it public again, cleaner, cheaper, and more sustainable. But here's the most powerful part of all this. It's working without permission. These movements don't wait for policy changes or corporate sign-offs. They take action, they disrupt, they organize, they educate, they protest, they plant, they litigate, they innovate, and in doing so, they're rewriting the rules. Because change doesn't come from the top. It never has. It comes from the ground up, from people who are told they're too small to matter, who then prove they're too powerful to ignore. But this fight is far from over. The forces of denial, distraction, and destruction are still strong. They still control media, money, and politics. They still flood our feeds with fake solutions and empty promises. They still try to convince us that resistance is futile. But every march, every lawsuit, every campaign, every act of defiance chips away at their empire. And slowly, steadily, the tide is turning. Here's what that means for you. You don't have to be a scientist or a policy expert. You don't need 1 million followers or a perfect carbon footprint. You just have to choose a side. Because silence is no longer neutral. In a burning world, apathy is complicity. And once you choose, you'll see how much power you actually have. Power to change what you buy. Power to amplify truth. Power to organize in your school, your city, your workplace. Power to protect. Power to resist. Power to imagine something better and make it real. Because this isn't just a fight to save the planet will keep spinning. What we're fighting for is life, community, justice, future. And the people leading that fight, they're not waiting. They're not asking. They're moving. The question is, are you with them? Because one thing is clear, this system won't save us, but we might save each other. So, after everything we've uncovered, from government negligence and corporate manipulation to youth rebellions and indigenous resilience, there's one unavoidable truth that lingers. This crisis isn't coming. It's already here. And yet, in a world teetering on the edge, the most dangerous thing isn't the fire, the flood, or even the billionaires peddling false solutions. It's the illusion that someone else is going to fix it. That's the lie we've all been sold, that if we recycle enough, buy the right products or vote every 4 years, the system will magically correct itself. But the system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed. It extracts, it exploits, and it expands. Not for the many, but for the few. And it will continue doing so until it collapses, or until we stop it. But here's where the story shifts, because despite all the darkness, it isn't a story of despair, it's a story of awakening. All around the world, people are waking up. They're realizing that waiting for the next election, the next summit, or the next billionaire-funded solution is just a slower way to lose everything. Instead, they're taking the fight into their own hands. They're turning grief into fuel, rage into movement, fear into action. They're not perfect. They don't have all the answers, but they're showing up, and that matters more than perfection ever could. Because the truth is, we don't need a few people doing climate activism perfectly. We need millions doing it imperfectly, relentlessly, and unapologetically. And when you zoom out, a strange kind of beauty appears. Amid all the chaos and collapse, there is also resistance, rebirth, and reimagination. Indigenous land defenders holding sacred ground, teenagers shutting down city streets, scientists risking careers to speak truth, communities rebuilding their economies around care, sustainability, and equity. These aren't isolated acts, they're signals, proof that another world is not only possible, it's already under construction. But this moment is fragile. And what happens next depends entirely on who shows up, and how. So, what do? We stop waiting for permission. We stop pretending neutrality is a moral stance. We speak louder, organise harder, and dream bigger. We protect what's left. We restore what's broken. We push for systems that serve life, not profit. That could mean joining a local campaign, divesting your savings, supporting indigenous sovereignty, starting a climate club, filing lawsuits, changing your job, telling uncomfortable truths at family dinners, voting, yes, but also understanding that real change rarely comes from ballot boxes alone. You don't have to do everything, but you have to do something. Because one day, when someone asks what you did during this defining moment in history, what will you say? That you watched it all unfold from the sidelines? Or that you stood up even when it was hard, even when it felt hopeless, and fought for a world worth living in? The future isn't written yet. And while the clock is ticking, we still have time. Not forever, but enough. Enough to act. Enough to resist. Enough to imagine something radical, honest, and alive. Because we're not just living through history, we're shaping it, right here, right now. The question is, will you be part of the problem or part of the turning point? That answer, it's yours to write.